at Westside Decorating Center. Good morning to you. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Art Lewis Show, a two-parter. Later on, we'll have open phones, but we're going to start the hour talking to State Representative Amos O'Neill. Representative O'Neill, good morning to you.
Good morning, my friend. How are you this morning?
Well, we're doing well. Hope you are too. Busy day.
Yes, sir.
So when we look at the Amos O'Neill plate, what's the priority on the top of the pile right now?
Well, the priority on the top of the pile is getting a budget done on time.
Yeah.
In Lansing. Yes.
And how are we doing toward that end?
Well, I'm sure you'll have varying degrees of opinions, but my opinion is we're not doing too well. We're not doing too well. I'm just reflecting on the last term when we were in charge of the budget. Mackinac is sort of like a milestone or a pinpoint, if you will. Every time we go to the Mackinac conference, the business community all over the state are there and the top leaders, and typically that Mackinac conference is sort of like a prerequisite before we almost put a bow on the budget, if you will. And so last term, I know we had the budgets all reported out prior to Mackinac, and we were doing some talking. I believe some budgets were reported out last Thursday, just from the undercurrent voices of Lansing, but I'm not sure. I haven't had any official communication on that, but I think we're behind schedule from my perspective, if you will.
And of course, the difference is last year you had a unified governor, House, and Senate. This year you don't.
Right. Well, I will add that I know the Senate put out a budget probably a couple weeks ago, and so we're waiting on the House to put out their budget, so there can be some reconciliation and three stool meetings, from both House, Senate, and the budget office to sit down and talk through those budget items. I'm sure there'll be a compromise. That's basically what happens when you have a budget that's submitted. For example, the Senate put their budget out. They know realistically that there's going to be some negotiation, and that's normal. And so we just need to have the House side put their budget out, and so we can start those talks.
Did the House side not put out? I guess it was some spec. It wasn't an actual budget. Then they put out some, I guess, a wish list almost.
Yeah. If you remember early on in the season, we did sort of like a partial school budget that was put out early in the year, and then I know recently there were some bills read in. I think last week there were some bills read into the record and submitted. But in terms of having here's a foolproof budget, here's our budget recommendations. I'm not sure if all of the appropriations committees have reported out. That has not been publicized, if it has. So there's just a lot of speculations right now. There's no definitive communication that I've received from our office, and I am on appropriations, and so I haven't received anything from that standpoint. So
let me ask about another topic. People of the 31st Senate District are disenfranchised. They do not have a representative. The governor has steadfastly refused to appoint a special election date.
Yeah.
I look at it as one of two things. Either she's afraid she's going to lose the seat, or she wants to use it as a bargaining chip in negotiations. Do we have any progress in getting any closer to having an election?
Well, that's a $1 million question, Art. And again, I don't have any sort of entry point of the governor's thinking in terms of what her plans are. I know I get this asked all the time. I mean, and I don't know any information. I don't know. And at some point, people were thinking like, well, if I would say something, then she would do it. I mean, that's far from the truth, as you know.
Yeah, that's been suggested to others who get the same answer.
Yeah. But, again, that's a vacancy that I agree should be filled, but I have no jurisdiction or no implications in terms of, when she does it or not. I know we're, again, taking calls in constituent cases, all of us, from the three areas, Saginaw Bay, Midland, I know. And so that's all I know. I know we're handling cases of constituency. I had a coffee hour the other day at Zoll Library. And I think that subject vaguely came up. I think it's sort of dissipating in terms of, from my coffee hours, I used to get them all the time. But this last one I had at Zoll Library, last week, I didn't get it. Yeah.
Sort of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. So there are other issues that came up. One issue that came up, the Carlton area of Michigan Sugar, that's sort of a pool of water that came up. But nothing about the 35th district.
All right, let me ask another one that you've put forth. You have supported removing at least part of the tax cap in the city of Saginaw. Any progress on that? Do you think it's ever going to come to fruition?
Well, I'm very optimistic about it. I know I've spoken personally to the Leader Hall, about it, and he seemed very interested in getting me a committee hearing. He said that's probably going to be in the goals committee. I said, yes, sir, it is. He said, okay, let me see what I can do. And so, I take him at his word. And so when we go back, I know we don't have session. We don't have session tomorrow, but we have it Wednesday and Thursday, and then potentially next week we won't have it. But I'm going to make contact with his office again just to just kind of remind him of it and see if we can get something on the books. I expressed to him personally that this is very important to our region. I said all of our business community supports it. Our chamber supports it. And, it's something that we need in terms of to position ourselves that if there are future developments that we would be able to capture some tax revenue from developments beyond the $3.2 million.
And if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you only address one portion of the tax cap, and that's the dollar amount, not the millage, right?
That is correct, and that's where a lot of confusion has been coming in when people say, well, what are you doing? You're going against the wishes of the voters. No, we're not. We are not touching the voter-imposed portion of that tax issue. That has to be decided by the voters, and so we're not touching that at all.
Just a portion you can affect, yeah. All right, Amos, hang on. I got to take a break, and then we'll come back and do one more segment with State Representative Amos O'Neill.
We're proud to make
Representative Amos O'Neill. Amos, one of the things that's happened recently is you were reappointed to the Midwestern Legislative Conference's Midwest Canada Relations Committee, your co-chair. How are our relations with Canada right now with all the tariff talk and everything else going on?
Well, it's still tenuous, but I think it's very important that we do have a line of communication with our colleagues across the border. So I'm very pleased to have been reappointed to that committee. I think I'm serving my third year. And so we've done a lot of work in that space. Senator Victory from the west side of the state, he and I work very well together, working with our colleagues on the other side of the river. And I think we've had several meetings with premiers and ag leaders and business leaders from Canada recently. And so we're planning another one coming up probably next week, just to talk about, if there's any changes in the tariffs and how it's impacting them. So I'm very pleased to be a part of that. And that's part of the Council of State Government.
Is the relationship, is it very strained right now?
I would say so. As you know, they are number one trading partners. You just think about all the import export that happens, whether it's steel, aluminum, food, ag, automotive. It's major. I mean, they're our number one trading partner, and so you would obviously know that that's an impact when you think about the cost that associate with any type of trade tariff issue. It works its way down to the end user, which are the citizens, and so that's something that we all are concerned about. When folks are working, trying to maintain the standard of living, and having extra burdens of financial output, it's not good at all. And then you look at the business potential of businesses that are kind of gun shy, if you will, in terms of, do we set up, do we add more, do we expand, do we add another spinoff? So there's a hesitancy that is happening with the current trade issue. Some folks say, well, we're still making money, and on some things, stocks are kind of fluctuating up and down. Just heard today, some fluctuation there. And so, for the business side of it, just think about that. For the business, if you're a business owner, or a business conglomerate, you're kind of cautious in terms of, investing right now. And so that's not good for any of us. And we're in a global market. You think about our platform, Hemlock Semiconductor, Dow Corning, Dow Chemical, these folks that are in our backyard. It'd be interesting to kind of talk to those guys and just kind of get a really, front seat business perspective from some of our top leaders that we all work hard to support,
Yet at the same time, Corning's coming in and they increased their investment in the facility they're building in Hemlock. They're going to be looking for 1,500 employees. Hemlock Semiconductor's looking for a couple of hundred. SK Siltron in Bay City's looking for a couple of hundred. Where are we going to find them, and where are we going to house them?
That's a good question, and all those questions are being talked about, consistently. For example, I know I met with AB and Mackinac and Griff, and just talking about their platform, and they're way ahead of schedule, and and so when you look at return on investment, we've gotten that, and we're getting that from our partners and our leaders at Hemlock and Corning. And so they've actually expanded their footprint beyond what they had suggested earlier. And also, as you said, the job market for employees has also expanded. And so they've sent folks to training, in different places to learn different techniques. And so that's working. But, when you think about what we had to do to get to where we are, before we had fields and fields of automotive vehicles just sitting there because we didn't have the technology to put that in place.
Chips.
Yeah. And so we're in that position. Now, here's another issue that you haven't talked much about, but there are some elements that China owns and have access to, which are magnets. They're part of every automotive mechanism in our vehicles, and they have control over that precious commodity. You haven't heard much talk about it, but check it out. That's something that's going to sneak up on us, and we're going to say, well, what happened? Okay,
so that's where you would have thought the pandemic taught us lessons, because look at our medical supplies, drug supplies, and the raw elements that came from China.
Yeah,
you would have thought we learned the lesson.
Yeah, but this is something we have to also understand. We are in a global market, and you're going to do this is the nature of the business. You're going to do some business with other countries. That's natural because we're a global market. And so we can't take one side and say, hey, just cut the doors off and the hinges and throw it to the side because we're going to close the door to China and other countries around us. That's impossible. It literally is impossible. Now, I understand in terms of certain precious, top security, areas like getting property next to an airfield. I would say no, and some other technology high risk,
Right.
confidential. I would say no, I agree. But come on, we're in a global market.
Right.
And that's just,
Here's the other side of that issue, though, and we get to see how this is all going to pan out. But there's very little doubt we've been taken advantage of by a lot of countries for a long time.
listen, I think you said it before. The pandemic really taught us a lesson, and I think now we're working at such a fast pace to try to shift the reliance on foreign countries in terms of our ability to chart our own future, and and technology being one. And so we're working feverishly to do that, but we can't put all our eggs in one basket. And even when you had NAFTA and all the trade decisions made decades ago, some of those things are coming to roost on us right now. And so we're pulling back. We need to make more stuff in America. When you think about going back to China, just think about this. If you pick up 2 or 3 of your garments in your house or products in your house, and you look at where was it made, it's gonna say either made in Taiwan, made in China, made somewhere overseas. All right.
Yep.
Think about it. All the clothes everybody, I think our listening audience, they go in their closets and just take a look, and they know this. This is not rocket science. And so, just be realistic in our decisions, and those things that are so critical. I agree. We need to address it, bring things back home, back on shores where we can control it. Here's another issue. We were like the cattle capital of the world, beef cattle,
Sure.
ag. We've farmed all of that out. Lack of a better term, we farmed that out. Now we're talking about bringing those things back in house. We got great farmers. Michigan is one of the greatest states to farm in. You got Wisconsin. You got the Midwest area. We get stuff from overseas in terms of we send stuff overseas and it comes back to us. I don't agree with that. In terms of our food security, we need to maintain control over that. And so it's a big issue, Art, and there's a lot to talk about in that space, in terms of us getting ourselves back in line with what our taxpayers expect. The majority of us say we want to control our destiny.
Yeah, absolutely.
In stock. Exactly. And so it
right.
doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. We can agree on that. We got to put the control back in so we can take care of our own destiny.
Well, Amos, I know you got a busy day, so we're going to let you go, but we'll chat with you again down the road. As always, look forward to it.
Thank you, my friend. Have a good day.
You too. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
94th District State Representative Amos O'Neill. We'll have him back soon. And we'll have open phones for the remainder of the hour, 989-752-6111. The number to call to get in on the conversation here on the Art Lewis Show.
The Michigan Lottery has 4 new...
Let's go back to teaching phonics in a school. And then he also said give parents a choice with school vouchers. The competition with the public schools and the teaching phonics should improve test scores for reading and math for 3rd and 4th graders. What do you think about that?
Well, the phonics has been kicked around a long time. If it'll help them read, I'm all for it. I have to tell you that years ago I was not for phonics. And the reason wasn't that it didn't teach people how to read, but it didn't teach them how to spell. So it was a sacrifice you made. But I think in this day and age, we don't have much choice. I think we need to do what we need to do to get these numbers up. It's been that way for a long time, though. I can remember when I moved here in the 70s and I was hearing about some of our teachers are the highest paid in the country, yet our test scores are 40-something in the nation. And it hadn't changed much. You can't just throw money at it. You got to figure a different way to do it. And
absolutely.
And that's my big thing is just throwing money at it. And don't misunderstand, teachers. You deserve a decent, livable wage. It's a very, very difficult job. But we should also be able to expect results. Exactly. So
accountability.
Yeah.
And they said too that if the I lost my train of thought here. But
Well, I can tell you one of the fixes.
oh yeah. The guest said that they, in the state of Michigan, they tried 6 other teaching methods to bring up reading and math test scores for 3rd and 4th graders, and none of them have worked. So that's why he says we need to go back to what really did work was phonics.
Well, that's one answer. It's not the only answer. For a long time, we were teaching to the test rather than teaching to the subject.
Correct.
And I don't approve of that either. I
Right.
think we got to get back to the basics.
Yeah.
Reading, writing, arithmetic, and all that stuff.
Right.
The stuff that's important in life. And we need to
Yep.
concentrate on it. And it's not going to happen overnight. And I'll tell you, the biggest single factor, if you want to see improvement in our test scores and how we're doing, is parent involvement. And until we
Right.
figure that piece out, no matter all the other pieces you put in place, until you figure that piece out, the hope is small.
You're
Because
absolutely
you've got
right.
to get the parents involved. And I don't know, I'm not smart enough to have the answer. I'm not an educator. But I do know that parent involvement makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And maybe we should go back teaching cursive again too. What do you think of that?
Well, this is going to improve. I have no problem with it, but it's not the critical issue on the table right now. Reading, writing, arithmetic are the critical issues. Writing, part of it. So yeah, I think we should learn cursive, but let's be honest. We also have to adjust what we teach to the real world we live in. We live in a
Right.
technological world where computers and smartphones are dominant. And so maybe we need to figure out how that technology can help us better teach, because that's a technology that youngsters respond to.
Right.
So, that's
Yep.
just my thoughts. All right.
Yeah. All right.
Good luck with
That's
it.
all I had.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Later. Bye.
No, it's true. When you think about it, education gives you your basis for life. Well, life today is in a technological bubble. We are surrounded by technology. Everywhere you look, whether it's your kitchen appliances at home that are computer controlled, whether you know it or not, your automobile, which has dozens and dozens and dozens of computers in it, the watch you wear on your wrist, the cell phone you carry has more computing power than the computers that landed Neil Armstrong on the moon. Think about that. You've got it in your hand. We live in a technological world. You can't get around it. So let's figure out how we use that technology to better improve education. Because it's obvious youngsters respond to it. They've taken to it like a fish in the pond. But still, test scores are terrible. All right, we'll take a break. Lines open 989-752-6111.
It's natural to have questions.
$140 million.
I have no idea what the cost is. I'm just not for it, but that's just a personal
Okay,
thing.
well, I'm not for it either. It's just it's not a tradition we have in this country, to parade tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue. It's just, maybe after maybe they did that after the end of World War II or something like that.
Here's
I'm not aware.
here's my thoughts on it. I might be a little more accepting of it next year. And the reason is that's our 250th. So, we should have
Okay.
major celebrations. So I would be willing to
Yes.
then take a look at it and say, well, can we do this? And how can we do it reasonably? And do we need heavy military equipment to do it? There's a lot of questions. But this year, I don't see the purpose. Next year, I might be able to say, okay, maybe we should do something.
Okay, that sounds fair.
All right. Good. That's
Uh,
good. So there.
That's good. Should I leave it there? Or
Yeah,
go
leave
on
it there. Leave it there. We'll have a good
We'll
conversation.
leave it there then.
We agree.
All right.
All right.
All
Take
right.
care. Bye-bye
Thanks,
now.
Art.
Yep, bye. And we have Charlie in Bay City. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning, Art.
Morning.
Back on the 35th State Senate District,
Ah, yes.
doesn't the governor of Michigan take an oath to uphold the state constitution as well as the U.S.
Sure.
Constitution?
Absolutely.
The state constitution is much more detailed and actually stronger in some ways, and especially in voting rights. And our rights are being violated right now, and people are making excuses for it. And those excuses just don't make any sense at all when it comes to rights.
Well, here's, first of all, I don't disagree because I think we're being
left out.
taxed without representation. How's that?
Yeah.
And I
And
think it
many
should have
other
been
things.
done a long time ago. The reasons for it are almost certainly political, and
Yes.
and he who or she who is in office has the power. So therein lies the problem.
But
You
still a violation of the Constitution.
Well, maybe depends on the language.
Oh,
It depends on the language in the Constitution. If it doesn't require a specific amount of days, then it's a tough fight. You understand that, right? And I don't know what the legislative enactment laws are like. So it
She
has.
is to fill a vacancy as soon as possible for the
Well, okay. What does that mean?
continuance of government,
What does that mean? See, there's the problem.
so that it's not interrupted.
Well,
There's an old saying. It's an old saying. I'll bet you're familiar with, and I'll bet you even coined it. When all else fails, read the instructions.
well, that's right. But remember this: instructions can be vague. That's why we have courts.
Well, the way I read them, I'm not a lawyer, but
No,
I can read and write.
Yeah, but you said the magic words, as soon as possible. What does that mean?
Well, she knew after the election, which was November 5th.
Yeah, you're
she
not
knew
answering
that
the
she was
question.
gonna have-
You're not answering the question.
well,
If it says as soon as possible, what does that mean? Who decides what as soon as possible is?
well, how long does it take her to look at
but
a
it doesn't-
calendar
well-
and say,
Takes her as long as she wants, apparently. I'm not
well,
understand.
all
I'm not.
the while you're violating somebody's rights.
Well,
That's
yeah, I
illegal.
understand. I understand all that, but what are you going to do about it?
Well, Section 241, 242
And
makes it illegal to conspire against someone's constitutional rights. Section 242 is deprivation of rights under color of law. Under color of law.
Other than
And
the
that's what she's doing.
representation during this period, she in no way has limited your rights. So you have I'm first of all, I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to play one on the radio.
That's enough. That's enough right there.
Well, you think it is, but
For me,
I'm not sure the courts will agree with you.
issues I want to discuss. I have issues I want to discuss with a state senator.
That you couldn't
They're not
discuss
fair.
with a state representative.
I also am entitled to discuss.
Yeah,
it
no,
with
I
a
understand
state
that.
senator.
I understand that because I look at it as taxation without representation. I
Yeah.
like the idea of withholding half our tax because we are not represented. But still,
Yeah.
it's a legal situation, and a simplified reading of the Constitution never seems to compare with what the courts figure when they read it. So just be careful of how simplified you look at the Constitution and say, well, it says so, because that's for the courts to decide. And so far, I'm surprised that nobody's brought and I don't know if anybody has brought a legal challenge to it. Because to me, that's the way to go. I mean,